Next, we have a very special session today. And this speaker is somebody that is very active in the International Actuarial Association. He goes by the name of Mr. Charles Cowling. And I feel like I should let him introduce himself because he's just such a great speaker. Every time I've seen him, he's somebody who's also been in Singapore not too long ago. I think sometime earlier back in April, he was actually here with the AI task force that was by the IAA. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Charles Cowling to make an introduction.
John, thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be with you here this afternoon for you, this morning for me here in London. And I'm delighted that you've invited me to join your conference. As Joanne said, I was fortunate to be in Singapore earlier this year. We held the first global AI summit for actuaries in Singapore. We chose Singapore as a very obvious centre to have such a conference, and it was a very successful conference, and we were very happy, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. But I'm currently the president of the International Actuarial Association, and so I want to talk to you a little bit today about the International Actuarial Association and a little bit about the what we're doing in the area of sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing momentarily while I turn off a couple of my apps so they don't interrupt me whilst I'm talking. I should have done that before I started. So, as I say, I'm the president of the International Actuarial Association. My great pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what the International Actuarial Association is all about. I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're thinking about the future of the actuarial profession, how we are looking at the impact that AI is going to have on the actuaries and what we're doing about it. But if I may, I'll start by talking about the International Actuarial Association, because I think it's important that you have a little understanding about the context in which we operate within the IAA. We are an association of associations, and we represent over 75,000 actuaries in over 115 countries. And as you can see from this map, we are pretty much represented all over the globe. There are parts of Africa and South America that still have some gaps, but actuaries these days are making an important contribution to financial services the world over. And that's great, but it also means that it's important that we have a way of coming together because there are things that we can do as a global community that we're unable to do within our own country, within our own association. And we organise ourselves within the IAA in three main areas. And these are the sort of the areas where the international community can do things which can't easily be done at a local level, or at least they're more efficiently done globally. So the first one is impacting or influence or engaging with global stakeholders. So by global stakeholders, I mean people like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, the International Organization of Pension Supervisors, the OECD. All of these big multinational organizations they need to be able to engage with the actuarial profession. Well, they can't engage with every single country and every single member association. They have to engage with the global community. So we provide that way of engaging with whether it's going to the United Nations and going to COP28 and representing what actuaries can do on climate change, or whether it's engaging with, for example, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, so that we can help them understand how actuaries are working alongside regulators in ensuring that the insurance industry is suitably robust and regulated. So it's a really important role that the global association has. Then the next area is around what we call it assuring the reputation of the profession. That's around promoting things like professionalism and education. It's around looking at how we can share best practice on professional standards, how we can share best practice on education and developing education and trends in education, as well as how we help smaller societies in developing countries build up the abilities and capabilities of the actuarial profession where they are. So it's about sharing. And this is one of the really important areas of the global profession, is that we learn from each other. And it doesn't matter how old or long established an association is, there's always massive benefits in learning from other associations around the world. And that's what the last area is, which is around advancing the competency of the profession. That's about learning all of the technical stuff that we need as actuaries to do our job, and sharing latest advances either in traditional areas or new areas. So I think about the IFOA in the UK. We've learned a lot by looking to South Africa and Australia and others in the role of actuaries in banking. And we've just started to introduce banking exams for actuaries in the UK. And we learn by seeing what innovations are being done in another country, and sharing those and ensuring that we globally continually advance what it is that actuaries can do. So that's the basic role of the IAA. And across all of those key areas of activity, AI is having a massive impact. It's affecting our relationships with the global organizations that are increasingly worried about AI. It's affecting things like professional standards and education of actuaries, and therefore the whole professional issue. And it's massively impacting the areas of competency and what it is that actuaries are doing in their day-to-day jobs, and what they might be doing in the future. So we've recognized that as a key challenge for us. So I'm going to spend some time talking about AI in this short presentation. But all of that sort of brings us to how we look at what it is that actuaries are going to be doing in the future. And it's hard to know exactly how AI is going to affect us. But the reality is, and you've had a number of presentations, I know already, on how AI is impacting the work of actuaries. It is going to affect us. We are going to need to evolve and to change. And at the IAA, we've done some interesting work looking at what it is that associations are currently projecting that actuaries do, and what they think they might be doing in the future. And it's quite interesting to see how the scope of actuarial work has changed over the sort of century or more since actuaries first became sort of common in financial services. And we started off generally as life assurance and mortality experts. And then over the years, we've picked up different areas of expertise, uh, such that in the last 5 or 10 years, things like banking and AI and climate change, data analytics are becoming much more common within actuarial work. And it's interesting, Paul Embrecht's back in a conference in 2017 was predicting then that the actuary of the future is going to have to go back to our core skills about people who understand data, people who understand models, and people who can help guide financial decisions in a risky world. And essentially, that's where I see our skills as actuaries lie. And our challenge in the future is, with all of this new technology, how can we apply those skills even more widely? And it's interesting that this isn't a new debate. I dug up some old papers from the Institute of Faculty of Actuaries in London. This has been debated since the middle of the 19th century. And there are a couple of quotes there in some of the papers about how actuaries need to broaden what it is that they do. So this is something we have been talking about for a little while. So I feel it's not unreasonable that we continue that debate today. It's interesting to see that the range where actuaries currently work. We did some research on actuarial websites, looking at the areas of activity, and it's pretty much as you might expect. But we are beginning to see more involvement in areas that historically were less seen as actuarial areas. So banking, investments, healthcare, data analytics, these areas are growing in terms of actuarial involvement. And it's really interesting to sort of see how whilst some of our traditional areas are becoming less growth oriented for actuaries, new areas are opening up. And these messages are reflected on the websites of actuarial associations around the world. This is taken from typical words that are used to describe the work of actuaries on association websites at the moment. And it's pretty much as you might expect, that we emphasize where our core skills and abilities are. The question is that the right mix for the actuary of the future? And it's interesting again to look at what is it that association websites are talking about? And again, they're talking about the things that you would expect: risk management and expertise in mathematics and professionalism and so on. And you can see the chart there. They are what you would expect. But when we ask people what they think they might need for the future, it's very different. And also, we see quite a bit of variety between countries. And some focus on the mathematical expertise of actuaries, some focus on the risk element, an actuary's ability to manage uncertainty, and some people focus on the professionalism of actuaries. Again, they're not unsurprising, but it is interesting how culturally it varies across countries. But coming back to the point I made before, when we think about what the future lies and we ask people what are the sort of words that we want to be using then things like flexible, problem solving, being multi-skilled, data, AI start to become more prevalent in the words that people think that actuaries need to be associated with. So there's some really interesting challenges for us as associations, for us as people um, looking to present actuaries as professionals who can solve problems, how we present ourselves within our own associations and in other areas too. And I do think we've got some key questions that we need to ask ourselves. How do we want to present uh, what we want to be, and is that a similar message globally, or is it appropriate that it fits local context? And it will always be the case that local context is important. It's working out what is of great value to present as a global perspective of actuaries, and where you need to tailor it for the particular sort of operative roles that you have within a local jurisdiction. And one final thought to leave you with, and it's maybe an odd thought, but as we look at the scope and the breadth of actuarial knowledge, and particularly the training of actuaries, I do think that it's quite interesting to look at the medical profession, because typically doctors train to be doctors at a very basic level, and then they specialize. And they specialize to become a pediatrician or a surgeon or a radiologist or a whole number of different specialists. And they have a core knowledge of anatomy, a core knowledge of basic medicine, but then specialize in areas. And it becomes relatively easier for doctors to add on new specialisms because they have the core area, and then when something new comes along, they then develop the expertise in that area. Maybe as actuaries, we too should focus on what are the core skills that we need in mathematics and risk and economics and professionalism, and then bolt on the specialist areas of insurance, pensions, banking, big data, whatever it is, and give ourselves the ability to flex more easily into new areas, rather than training everybody to be an insurance expert or everybody to be a particular expert. If we want to thrive as a profession, we need to really think about how we can respond to the changing environment. So that brings me on to AI, because that is what's driving the environment that we're in. So I'm going to say just a few things about where we are, what that means for us, and what it is that the IAA is doing. And it's we can see how if we look in context, and it's important to look in context, that this is just one of a number of technical innovations. I'm old enough to remember actuarial life before spreadsheets, and everybody got really excited when Excel came along and thought that's going to change the world for actuaries, and in fact we're going to get computers to do everything, and actuaries aren't going to have anything to do. Well, quite the opposite. The new technology just gave us new tools to be able to expand what it is we're able to do, and I see exactly the same thing with AI. It's also important to understand that this isn't that new. AI has been with us a long time. Go right back to that little caption in the bottom left there. I'm old enough to remember very well when Garry Kasparov, who was then world chess champion, was first beaten by a computer, Deep Blue from IBM. And everybody thought that was a world-changing moment, that computers were better than humans. And subsequently, computers have beaten champions at Go and other very sophisticated games. They're now driving cars. They're all doing all sorts of things. And we are where we are now with Gen AI models. And you've had, as I say, a number of presentations today about what AI can do. And it's huge, it's growing, but it has been with us a long time, and we have to recognize that this isn't just something that's appeared in the last year or two. What is perhaps more common or more in terms of our psyche are the headlines that all of the AI has produced. And I've just taken some from recent UK headlines. We've seen a lot of headlines about AI replacing jobs. And I'm sure that we will continue to see those headlines. Newspapers like to create excitement about things, and they do it by these sorts of headlines. So that's coming, but they do have an underlying truth, which is that AI is creating a lot of change. Now, I pinched this slide from Frank Chang, and I noticed he was earlier on today, so he may have used this. So he may have seen this slide already, but I liked it, so I pinched it. And it comes from a very good, or it's derived from a very good article in the Casualty Actuarial Society Actuarial Review. And you can look it up. I think I give a link to it later. And it's basically saying that if you're looking to the future, you've got the x-axis, which is how many actuaries are going to be impacted. Are we going to replace most of our actuaries or hardly any? And how much is our job going to change? And that's the y-axis. And so depending on whether you think that we're going to do a lot of new roles or be entirely replaced by AI, it depends on where you end up in those boxes. And go to the article. Frank Chang may have already spoken to this, but we do need to think what it is that actuaries bring, and how can we use AI to help us. I'm an optimist. I think that we are still going to be massively valuable, not just in actuarial work, but in all sorts of areas, that people will still want people. And you only have to look at how difficult people are in terms of needing other humans to interact with, whether it's about medicine, whether it's about legal stuff, whether it's about complicated financial stuff. Yes, they like to get answers from AI, but they want people to interact with them. But that is going to mean some important changes in our skill sets. The other thing to recognize is that this tidal wave that's coming along of AI could easily become a tsunami. Quantum computing, which is only a few years away if they sort out the physics of cooling these things, potentially is going to give us computers that are 100 million times more powerful than we have today. And so the capability of AI is only going to grow and grow massively. And you don't need me to tell you of all of the risks that AI potentially brings. And you've had a number of presentations on AI. You may well have covered many of these, and I'm not going to dip into them. But it gives us a number of challenges, and we have to be, as professionals, very alive to all of the different risks that AI is going to bring. But it's also going to bring a load of opportunities. It's going to give us not only new ways of doing existing tasks, but it's going to give us the opportunity to do new tasks we hadn't even thought about. And if we're going to stay ahead of the game, we need to embrace what it is that AI is going to be able to give the AI enhanced actuary of the future. So finally, just a few words about what the IAA is doing. Well, we're looking to see what's going on around the world, and we're seeing new roles, new solutions, new industries. I've already mentioned Frank a couple of times. These are jobs that didn't exist a few years ago, and we're seeing actuaries taking them around the world. And so learning from what are the sorts of new jobs that people are doing around the world is great. And we can learn from individuals who are pioneering what it is that actuaries can add to not just financial in services industry, but the much wider society. And a good example of that, and this is looking at some new solutions, is how we suddenly using AI to come up with things that just didn't exist before. So John Olakuru, who's an actuary based in Africa, is developing apps to help smallholder farmers combine all sorts of knowledge about weather and what's coming along with knowledge about seeds and soil to look after crops. And combine that with insurance products that look after small communities in mining areas of particularly Kenya and Ghana, really making a massive difference for society in those areas, which is great. And then completely new industries. Adam Driussi, an actuary, founded Quantium, who are close to you in Singapore. And in fact, I think they've got a big office in Singapore. Australia are probably ahead of many other countries in applying data science within an actuarial world. But if you look at what they are doing, they're applying core actuarial skills in new areas, and they're building up a massive business in a very non-traditional data analytics area. And it's really impressive to see how Australia generally are embracing data science as a core actuarial area of activity. So we in the global community can learn from that and seeing how we can use that to promote, to help actuarial associations around the world. So I mentioned Singapore at the outset. We had our first summit there in April this year, which was a great success. And we looked at setting up this task force that was going to help the global association rise to the challenge of what it is that AI is going to mean for us. And it was a great opportunity to bring experts from around the world. And we've grouped people into 5 areas. We're looking at how actuaries need to respond to the professionalism and ethical challenges of using AI. We're looking at how we have to develop training, not just for graduates and the actuaries of the future, but existing actuaries. How we can help actuaries use the new tools. What are the challenges around governance and creating frameworks with regulators for the use of AI? And then most exciting of all, what are the innovations that AI is going to enable actuaries to branch into, and how can we cultivate that sort of growth mindset? So we've set off a load of people doing all sorts of exciting work in those areas. And we're looking to develop more tools, have competitions, hackathons, podcasts, because the actuary of the future is going to be multi-skilled, problem solving, data analysis, proactive, and applying skills to new areas. And we've all got to do that if we want to see the actuarial profession grow and continue to expand, and not just get stuck in the historical areas that we've traditionally been in. And so I'll leave you with a thought. I'm a great optimist. I think our core skills are massively valuable. I think AI is going to give us new capabilities. But I also think that if we don't embrace those new capabilities, then we may be replaced. And actuaries with AI will replace actuaries without AI. So it's up to all of us to try to look at what the new technology will give us and ensure that we keep as up to speed as possible. So there we are, John. I've finished, hopefully just about on time, but I'm happy to take a question or two if you wish.
Yeah, before I guess while waiting to see if anyone on the audience has any questions, I had one for you actually. I mean, knowing that you also spend some time leading in the IFOA. This question is about a point you mentioned earlier about actuaries perhaps becoming more like doctors, being more generalists. So my question is about the education pathway. So in your opinion, for the same period of time an actuary spends studying for the exams, which of the courses would you replace to make way for more AI related skills, or are you thinking more about adding on more learning?
So I think the first thing the IFOA is beginning to embrace this is that we focus on the associate level as qualifying as an actuary. So just as doctors become doctors when they come out of medical school, those core skills are where you qualify as an actuary, and the IFOA is beginning to focus that the associate level is where a qualified actuary sits, not a specialist actuary, but a qualified actuary. And those core skills need to embrace AI. And there will be detail of the syllabus that needs to react, and whether we need to do the same training in things like commutation functions and building up demographic tables and so on, or whether we actually train people in how to use AI to do that sort of stuff. But then it's in the specialist areas where I think the most opportunity lies. And this is where I think the medical analogy is an interesting one. So we haven't got it in the IFOA, a specialist subject in data analytics. We've only just introduced one in banking. I think there's opportunity for us to introduce new specialisms. So somebody qualifies at the basic associate level, but then we look at creating a specialist qualification for the data scientist actuary. And they're not, they may have some knowledge of insurance or pensions, but actually their core knowledge is in analyzing and drawing trends and understanding data and the statistical analysis of data. So I think that's the challenge for us at the IFOA, is to look at what are the new specialist areas that we can start to develop specialist exams for.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, just in the essence of time, I guess I'll wrap up the conference here. But also, together with my thank you to Charles, I think today was really an international day for us, and I really wanted to say that today would not have been possible at all without the IAA as a platform to bring all the associations around the world together. And this is really helping to increase the competency of the actual profession, especially coming on the topic of AI. I think it's so important for us to come together to have these dialogues about the latest developments and how the actuarial industry and profession should be responding and adapting to this. So the topics that Charles mentioned earlier around governance and risk management, I think these conversations are at the most productive when we're all coming together with perspectives and the latest developments all around the world to keep ourselves informed. So I think especially for Singapore as a little small hub of Asia, we gain a lot from these lessons that we learn from, I mean, not just the UK, the Australia, US, and this is helping to bring up the competency of our local actual profession. And in turn, we also look to pass this kind of knowledge on to the ASEAN countries around us. So I think we're in really great times with technology and allowing us to have this virtual conference and having Charles here together with us, as well as all our other speakers today. So really want to thank all of you in the audience, as well as Charles, for all your time today. And I hope that we all had a really fruitful Singapore Actuarial Conference and look forward to seeing all of you next year.